Hey guys, it's Jonathan Reich, a licensed CPA in the state of Louisiana. Today we're going to be talking about the ERC Specialist lawsuit. Kind of who's involved with it, what it entails, what you guys need to know. This is a little different from the normal format of my videos. Normally I have a PowerPoint to go along with this, but this content's really dry, and so I'm just going to kind of walk through it pretty quickly, give you an overview. I didn't really feel like a PowerPoint would be super helpful because it's just regarding an ongoing lawsuit. So, ERC specialist is essentially an ERC mill. What an ERC mill is someone or a business who sprung up in around 2020, 2021 to help business owners file for the ERC, which was a COVID relief program brought about from Congress in 2020 and 2021 to essentially help with the COVID pandemic and stabilize the economy by providing some much needed relief to these business owners. I have a little bit more about that on some of my other content created for this site. Essentially, it's a refundable payroll tax credit for the employer portion of payroll tax, and basically it just gave business owners a little bit of relief. Okay, well, that sounds all great and dandy, but why is there a lawsuit regarding it? So, ERC Specialists is basically one of those companies that popped up. They said, we have more expertise, more experience. We're specialized in payroll tax. We know the ins and outs. We can get you the max refund, and we can get it for you quick. And all of that is that's kind of a lie, in my opinion, as someone who's been in the space, because the numbers don't lie. You're going to be entitled to this much. It's very cut and dry what funds are eligible, and then what typical turnaround times are. So for somebody to say we can get you more and we can get it for you quicker, that right there sets off red flags. So an overview of the case: the plaintiff is Yaya's Kitchen. Yaya's was engaged by ERC specialists saying we can work with you to help you get a good chunk of change back. Yaya says that's great because I don't have the time or the experience to file for this credit on my own behalf. So Yaya's and ERC specialists are the two primary parties in the case. There is a third and fourth defendant, and that would be the law office of Rocky D. Crofts, LLC, a business, and then Rocky D. Crofts himself, which is a Utah attorney. And basically, the whole premise of the case is that Yaya said ERC specialists misrepresented themselves. ERC said that they're experts and they can do it quicker, and they can do it better, and they can get you more money, and they're going to charge this percent for their services. And Yaya said none of that is true, and then the fee that you charged is quite unreasonable. It was around $169,000. I feel that $169,000 is pretty high. It was a 15% contingency fee. I have seen as high as 12% in dealing with my own personal clients. 15% is definitely on the high side. It's not unheard of in the space. So let's get to the nuts and bolts of the lawsuits. Yaya suffered substantial economic loss during the food business. The food business was hit pretty hard by the pandemic, so they really needed this ERC money. So a referral agent for ERC specialists reached out to Yaya's and said, hey, do you need some help with this massive tax credit? And Yaya said, yeah, of course. And the referral agent said there won't be any costs associated with having us file. And that right there is a big sticking point in the lawsuit. We'll go over that in a bit more detail in just a minute. So let's jump into the nuts and bolts of the actual allegations. So central to Yaya's claims is that the client agreement that they signed with ERC Specialists was supposed to provide specialized tax services and legal advice concerning ERC filings. The defendants charged a 15% contingency fee, totaling that $169,000 amount that I mentioned earlier. Yaya feels that this fee was unreasonable, illegal, and in violation of regulations governing the IRS practices. And then complicating these matters even more is that Yaya accuses the law office of Crofts and the lawyer Crofts, for having an incestuous relationship with ERC Specialists. Essentially, he had a financial interest in ERC Specialists, and that wasn't disclosed. And he was representing both Yaya's and ERC Specialists, which is a conflict of interest. A little bit more to flesh that out. Essentially, Yaya's gave power of attorney to the law office without realizing the lawyer who was representing Yaya's had a financial interest. And Yaya's alleged that the law office put its interests ahead of Yaya's the client, and they suffered harm because of that. The final allegation is that the referral agent that originally engaged Yaya's misled them, claiming that Yaya's would have no costs incurred by the plaintiff in filing for the ERC. So as a roundup for what the allegations are, there is an excessive contingency fee. ERC specialists failed to disclose conflicts of interest between ERC specialists and the law office, knowing that Yaya's was also engaging with that law office. The misrepresentation of expertise, the time frame, and associated costs, and then the breach of fiduciary duty by prioritizing ERC specialists' financial gain over the client welfare. So if you mix all four of these things together, what do you have? You have a lawsuit. So the other items regarding the lawsuit are that Yaya's asserts if they had been properly informed regarding what ERC Specialist was going to do, they would have never entered the client agreement in the first place, and that they would have had their in-house CPA or their outsourced CPA who does their taxes do the ERC filing, and it would have only cost around $3,000, not $169,000. So there is a material suffering from the business due to the loss of these funds because they really needed them after the pandemic. One other sticking point in the allegations is the claim of deceptive trade practices. Essentially what that is ERC specialists made it seem like it was really complicated to claim this tax credit, and it can be. They made it seem like it may be something that Yaya's couldn't handle, or that might be difficult for somebody who doesn't deal with payroll tax every day to handle. And so that's kind of when they were able to talk themselves up and say, we're an expert in ERC tax credit filing. We can get you the most amount of money. And that's a little deceptive. The other thing is ERC specialists, and I want to put this in big bold letters, call it out. ERC specialists allegedly promised a 16-week turnaround time for ERC refunds. And that's just unrealistic. You're at the whim of the IRS. 16 weeks may have been the standard, but there's no way to guarantee that you're going to get the money when the IRS gives it to you. And the IRS is going to tick and tie and reconcile and make sure that every dollar that they're sending out, the taxpayer's dollar, may I add, is actually deserved by the person who's receiving those funds. So, what does Yaya's want to see out of this lawsuit? What do they want to receive from ERC specialists for causing all this grief and heartache? They want compensatory damages. They want to recover their contingency fee of $169,000 and any related financial losses. Perhaps maybe they had to take out a loan to pay that $169,000. They're going to want that interest back on the loan. They're also going to want punitive damages. They want the defendants penalized for malicious and fraudulent actions. They want a rescission of the client agreement, nullifying any contractual obligations between Yaya's and ERC specialists. They want pre- and post-judgment interest, attorney fees, and associated legal costs because they're having to go through the headache. They don't want to have to pay for all these lawyers. Totally understandable. And then they want declaratory judgments clarifying the rights and responsibilities of the parties involved. So what if Yaya's wins this lawsuit? What does that mean? What are the implications of that? Essentially, the lawsuit highlights systemic concerns regarding these ERC mills and how these government programs for relief funds were handled. So if Yaya's wins, it could be a lot of these ERC mills, depending on the amount of service delivered, the contingency fee, a lot of these ERC mills could be in hot water if the services that they gave to their clients, if the clients don't feel like the services rendered stacked up to what they had to pay to receive those services, there could be the potential for lawsuits. And the owners of these ERC mills, whether it be CPAs, lawyers, or just some guy who happened to have a little bit of payroll tax understanding, could be in hot water. They could be, they could be facing similar lawsuits should their clients feel that they didn't get a fair shake. In my personal opinion, this lawsuit, while it highlights some of the mishandling of these government funds, I think this lawsuit is without merit. At the end of the day, Yaya's did agree to the contract. They should have signed the contract. The fee is on the higher end. It's not unsubstantiated. 15% is probably on the deep end. It's probably towards the top end of what I would expect a client to have had to pay to one of these companies to get their ERC funds. But they agreed to it. They should have known what it was going to cost whenever they filed for that ERC credit. And so at the end of the day, I don't really see Yaya as necessarily having a successful stance when trying to justify all of this to a judge. But if they do win, it's definitely going to set important standards for consultants and advisors and other people who assist businesses in obtaining government tax credits, because now there is a precedent, there is a standard of care that's going to be established. And if the services rendered don't match the amount of funds paid, these people could be subject to a lawsuit themselves.